There's two events in track and field that are exciting. Everybody knows about. One's the 100 and one's the mile.
I think the mile still has such a special appeal to it. Like, I feel like what people ask you if they don't know much about running is like, what's your mile time?
There's poems about the mile, there's songs of the mile, there's movies called the mile. And you'll see that, the Europeans like running the 1500, but they still come to the United States to run the mile. They like coming over here and running the mile because it's a magical mark.
Hi, I'm Ben Blankenship, and I've lived in Eugene for 10 years. Came out here to be part of Oregon Track Club with Mark Rowland, and I've stayed ever since. I myself as the executive director of the Endless Mileage Project. We're kind of a two-prong or two-pillar nonprofit that does the Fast Forest here that represents athletes breaking barriers. And then we also do recovered running, where we accept new and gently used items from the running community to give back to future runners. The Fast Forest recognizes American athletes who break 4 and 4:30 in the mile by planting trees in recognition of that barrier breaking performance. I think a lot of things are here in Eugene, but one reason we really felt like the mile is because the mile is kind of the iconic distance in track and field. Like, if people are going to have an experience with track and field, it's normally the mile. Whether good or bad from gym class, it's usually the mile.
Almost every track in the country, it's 400 meters, and so 4 laps equals a mile. It's pretty simple to go out and do. Anyone could theoretically go out and try and break this barrier at any point. Even if you are a 10K runner or a marathon runner, the mile is still kind of that special distance. We all ran it in high school. Even if you weren't on the track team, you would run the mile in PE class.
I came here to run the mile in 4 minutes. I wanted to run the mile in 4 minutes. And then I had a picture of Darrell Burleson. It's a picture of Burleson ahead of Ernie Cunliffe. And the caption says, Burleson under 4, Ernie Cunliffe barely misses it. I thought, that's the place I want to go. There isn't any place else that's got as many sub-400 milers there.
So the first sub-4 mile at Hayward Field was in April 1960. It was run by Darrell Burleson. It was in a dual meet with Stanford. He was running with Ernie Cunliffe from Stanford. Cunliffe was out front for most of the race, and then Burleson passed him in the last about 200 or 100 meters.
One reason the Fast Forest is a super cool idea, and one reason I really like it, is the idea that when you walk through it, it shows, especially in these early years, about how hard the barrier really was to break, right? You have 3 years between dawn and Dairo. That's big, especially when you get to the end of the forest where it's 10 people in one day, and it might be 20 people in one day. And I think that really kind of tells the story of breaking barriers.
I remember when Bill said, hey, it's time, I trusted him completely. And he says, they're going to lead you through the first lap in 60 seconds, and the second lap you're going to come by in 1:59, and you've got to be in the lead for the third lap, and you cannot let it slow down. And so consequently, off the Bowerman turn there, I took the lead, and I just came out from behind the grandstands and going down that straightaway. Burleson went by me. Halfway down, as we went into the turn, Roscoe went by me, and I said, I got to hang on, sprinted as hard as I could to the finish. When I hit the straightaway, I didn't bother to look at the clock. I just ran as hard as I could looking at Roscoe. And after the race was over, the announcer says, Darrell Burleson at 3:57.5. And then there was a long pause, and it says second place was Roscoe Devine in 3:58. And I thought, oh, I missed it. And then they finally said, Bell 3:59.8, and I was excited. I made my goal.
Choosing the 4:30 barrier, that was a little bit trickier. Obviously, everyone knows for men, the 4-minute barrier is the thing. For women, it's a little bit different. Obviously, women's records weren't being tracked as long as men's records. The first American woman to break 4:30 was in 1975. So that's a long time after the first American man was recorded to break it.
I hadn't thought as much about it as I have like the last couple years. I feel like it's definitely become more of a thing. Like I think in college, I actually remember talking to a lot of teammates of like trying to find what the female equivalent of breaking 4 in the mile was.
If you were to use a conversion calculator, the conversion from 4 minutes to the women's version is closer to like 4:34, 4:36. Anyone who breaks that 4:36, 4:34, I mean, that's significant.
I do feel like in some ways when you set that standard, everyone rises up, and I think you'll get more people running under 4:30 because you have people that set their sights on that. Ideally, then we get more people under 4:30, and then maybe it's eventually like, oh, that the equivalent of that barrier in a couple years is 4:25 or something.
I hope that this encourages younger women to get into the sport and to chase a goal and have one thing that they and all their friends and peers can chase, but at the same time give them a little bit of patience and wisdom to know that it's okay if it doesn't happen before you finish high school. It's okay if it doesn't happen before you finish college. You're going to continue to develop, and hopefully this keeps women in the sport for longer.
One big thing is that I think it cements. We had a bunch of athletes, right? And the forest ranges in wide variety of calibers of athletes, right? You have athletes who are 3-time Olympians. You have athletes who really their biggest achievement and their crowning achievement was breaking 4 minutes. And I think those stories are one of the coolest stories. We had a couple individuals reach out saying like, you know, I had the opportunity to kind of participate on my college team and my goal was to break 4. And there was really no recognition for that until now.
I think the Fast 4 shows the power of the running community and just the growing number of people that kind of are raising the bar and like breaking these barriers and like the way that the sport is moving. For me, I think it's something tangible that you're training toward or working toward that I think you're like, okay, these people did it, I can do that too.
I think really historically, right, it wasn't until we get to really now, right, 2022 is 64, which is the most athletes by any year, by over 15, I believe. I think the reason why it's still compelling is the idea that it was once thought to be impossible. I mean, for the men, they thought you just could never do it, and for the women, there were so many other reasons why 4:30 would never be broken. So I think it's the idea that like once the impossible is achieved, then anything is possible.